Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. I hate to be the person to break you away from great conversation, but we will be getting the program started here in just a minute. So if you could finish grabbing food from the tables in the back and find your seats, we'll be getting started in just about a minute here. So thank you. All right, everyone, thank you so much. We'll be getting started here in just a second, so if you could please find your seats, we will get this program underway. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Eastgate Regional Council of Governments 2023 annual meeting. It's been a long 4 years since we've been here today, and it's great to be back. Good to see all of the people's faces in this room. Good to have these conversations and to make community in this space again. So happy to have you all. As we gather here today, it's not just any other meeting. It's a celebration, and it's a celebration of a half a century of collaboration and commitment towards the betterment of our region. It's an honor to stand before you as we commemorate the agency's 50th anniversary, and more importantly, the incredible partnerships that have been instrumental in our journey. Over these past 5 decades, countless individuals, organizations, and institutions have come together to uplift our region, focusing on critical areas such as business and economic development, environment, transportation, public health, and planning. Today we stand here as a testament to the immense power of collaboration and partnership. Many of you, the architects of this achievement, are in this room today. This success belongs to us all. So before we delve deeper into today's program, I want to take a moment to discuss two concepts that underpin all of our work and will act as the cornerstone for our discussions today. Now, while I may not have the academic flair of Eastgate's own college professor, Mark Ragazine, I ask for your patience as we delve into these concepts. And the two that I want to address are public deliberation and sustained dialogue. In our line of work, we constantly engage in public deliberation and sustained dialogue, even if we don't always label them as such. But what do they really mean? Public deliberation is more than just a conversation. It involves thoughtful consideration, informed cognition, and most importantly, communication that transcends individual perspectives to forge collaborative decisions. When we deliberate, we come together as a group. We listen, we discuss, and most importantly, we decide. It's a process that goes beyond the confines of even just this room, touching upon issues of universal concern and shaping our policies and actions. Then we have sustained dialogue. Not to be mistaken as mere conversation, it involves ongoing and honest communication, even in the face of division and conflict. Dialogue goes beyond just talk. It's about bridging differences and finding common ground. When we add the term sustained, we're talking about a commitment to keep our conversations going, no matter how long it takes until we reach a resolution. And an important criteria to apply to these processes of sustained dialogue and public deliberation is the ability to comprehend the wide range of possible and probable futures that may emerge around specific problems and issues. It is always prudent, after all, to plan for the worst and hope for the best. But an even older statement reminds us that without a vision, there can be no progress. In any case, a basic test to apply to experiences of sustained dialogue and public deliberation may involve the degree to which the process ignites at least some sparks of change. So today, as we reflect on the past that's behind us and we begin to chart our futures, let's embrace these two concepts wholeheartedly. Let's engage in thoughtful deliberation and sustained dialogue, for these are the tools that will propel us toward another successful 50 years. So looking at my friends from YSU, maybe Eastern Gateway, I think everybody here has earned college credit for some type of community theory course. No, getting some head nod? No, okay. Sorry, I don't have that kind of pool, but we'll move forward with this event. And what better way to kick it off than celebrate with a video highlighting our key milestones and achievements of the past 5 decades. Please direct your attention to the screens for a short video.
What I really like about Eastgate, spending years of my life working on highways, roads, and bridges, the ability what Eastgate works with is communities and trying to make a difference in communities. It's common, but it's not common, and the opportunity to get into the communities and make a difference is really what attracts me. I really seen different projects that Eastgate put out that just helped communities get stronger and grow, and that's attractive and still what drives me today.
I'm proud of the fact that a lot of the staff that I hired are still here. A lot of the staff that I hired were retired from the agency, so we had a good working relationship with them. And we're proud of the fact that we had a very good working relationship with all our member communities. So we always had a good working relationship with all our elected officials, state agencies, ODOT, Federal Highway, EPA, Department of Development. We were basically funded by 2 major programs when I took over: transportation and water quality planning. We had some economic development funds received, but we wanted to do more, so we started pursuing some other grants. We did become an economic development district, which is a major funding source. That was one we achieved. The State Bond Issue 2 program came about in 1988, and we jumped on it heavy in 1989 and designated the agency to administer that program for Mahoning and Trumbull counties. And the final one was later on, a number of years later, when the Appalachian Regional Commission included Ashtabula, Trumbull, and Mahoning counties within the ARC, and we became the funding agency for that. I felt it important for all our members to know everything we do, how do we do it, where they can get funds, where they can't get funds. If the community came for us for grant funds for a project and we couldn't do it, we couldn't do it. We tell them we couldn't do it. We look for other sources, of course. But we were always very honest with our members and our communities on what we could do for them. After 26 years of being executive director, I think the agency did a lot of things that I'm proud of.
What I'm most proud of when it comes to the agency is the ability to use the Eastgate platform to bring communities together, to bring regional partners together, to facilitate discussion, to get common ground. And what's most important now when we look at the region, it's a unified vision.
My favorite project of all time, and I tell people this, was the first phase of the Lake to River bike trail. This was the first 13 miles of bike trail, and there was no bike trails at that time. And Susan Dickin, who was the executive director of Mill Creek Park, came to me after one of our technical advisory committee meetings. She says, let's try to get a bike trail. There's funding available now. That was a lot of work, but that was probably my favorite project of all time, the bike trail.
I got invited to a ribbon cutting, and I thought I'm going up to see a street that was paved. Understand what the fuss was about. The road was blocked off. We had news media doing live coverage. We had the Ursuline High marching band ready to come down the street, and my comment was, this is a paving project. I've been on tons of these, but it really was a community reclaiming its city. The ability to see these lamps all matching, the benches, the waste cans, and then the prize walks and the brick. It really, then it hit me what we're trying to do here. What's excited, and I think that'll really make the difference, is a repopulation effort. I've heard about the decline in repopulation for 50 years. If we can get this turned around and watch this region grow, that'll have me smiling as I'm on my walker. I just never thought that we'd be talking about trying to bring people back to the area. I know we got a path for success here. And again, it really goes back to the support that we have from community and business. And that we're going to make a difference. It's going to change. It's going to be, we're all going to be sitting around and smiling about the efforts we made here in 2023.
That's the history of the agency. So we've moved around, but we've always been here and doing a good job. They're doing a good job right now.
It's so important for us to take the time to reflect on the journey that has brought us all here today. Up next, it's my profound honor to introduce two people to the stage. Please welcome Ohio State Representative for the 59th District, Lauren McNally, and Eastgate's Executive Director, Jim Kinnick.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. I'm so excited that I was able to come today to celebrate this unbelievable 50-year occasion. I really want to say congratulations, but more so I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to all of you in this room. I want to say thank you to Eastgate. It's because of the work that you have done that we can be proud of the Mahoning Valley. We can be proud of what we're building here, what we have built here, and what I know we're going to continue to build here through all of these amazing collaborations and partnerships. And I feel extremely lucky to have been able to work with Eastgate on the changes that have happened just in the city of Youngstown during my time on council. And I am beyond excited to see what we can do together now in my new role at the State House. So on behalf of the Ohio House of Representatives, I want to present to you a resolution marking this amazing occasion, and congratulations again.
Thank you, Representative McNally. It's important, and we appreciate coming out. She was just talking about the busy schedule she has today, and she took time to come out to this event, but it's important that we get that strong support from our legislators, and she's always there answering the call when we need some help. So thank you again, Representative McNally. You know, I'm sitting here thinking it's been 4 years since we were able to have an annual meeting. COVID got in the way of everybody's lives, but it's exciting to get out here, and glad that we can get back when it was our 50th anniversary. When I looked, I said, I was thinking as I was driving in, this is my 8th year here at Eastgate. I don't know where that time goes. You know, 8 years passed, and I look around and see friends from ODOT that I worked with for years. So, but I've enjoyed it. I tell everybody I love coming to work because this is fun. But when I look at the organization, I have to give all the predecessors, especially John Getchie, building an organization based on transparency and community involvement. The stability of the agency is a result of strong leadership. And I asked John and Kathy, his wife, to stand up and be recognized by the crowd. 27 years, correct, John? 26. 26. Oh, I didn't want to. Almost 26. Yes.
You got a ways to go.
I do. I'd also like to recognize the entire Eastgate staff. It certainly makes my job easier when you're surrounded by an energetic, talented group that share the passion to help our communities grow. Many of the initiatives that I'm going to talk about today are really in addition to the work programs that are ongoing and we're required to deliver. It's truly a team effort at Eastgate, and I'd like the Eastgate staff to stand to be recognized now, please. 'Thank you. We were teasing. It felt like we were planning a wedding, and we got here. And but it's a great event, and it looks beautiful. Credit to the staff here at Stambaugh too. Lastly, before I get into some of the projects and some of the crazy ideas we have going, I'd like to offer my sincere appreciation to the support we receive from the General Policy Board, the Finance Executive Committee, the Technical Advisory Committee, Citizens Advisory Committee, many of which are in attendance today. Their involvement, their support, their guidance and direction are invaluable to the success of our agency and the success we have in our region. So thank you to those committees and the groups and individuals who make up those committees. We'll have it mastered here. Okay, so before I get started, I want to just recap, and I'm going to be quick on this. I don't want people to worry about what we're saying up here, trying to figure out what project that is. But I'd like to recap some of what I'm going to call wins over the past year or so. And to be clear, wins in my eyes are any additional project monies that we can commit to the region, moves us forward much quicker. Monies mean project. Project means orange barrels. I love orange barrels. So I will say I'm getting my for orange barrels is being tested in downtown Youngstown, Mayor, but and that project is looking great and getting close to the end, so I'm excited about that. But when we just look at the board, I just wanted to just show you over $113 million in this area, and most of this is through ODOT, so thanks to our friends at the Department of Transportation for supporting what we do here. That was kind of our transportation infrastructure, and everybody knows Eastgate's transportation infrastructure, planning and development. So when we just look at the planning and development side, this is EDFP grants, and you're going to hear from Ellen Heinz. She's the Ohio rep for Economic Development Administration. We were 7 for 7 in our last submittals for grants, totaling over $11 million in just the last year and a half. So we appreciate the strong support we get from EDA. It shows you the investments that we're making in our area are good investments because you have the support from not only the state legislators but the federal government too. So we appreciate that from EDA. Ellen. Now, I just want to touch on also under our planning section is our ARC. There's more to come. I'm going to talk a little bit more about ARC projects, but this is more just odd projects that we're able to fund. And I don't want it to be derogatory when I say odd. These are projects that can't find funding in other places, You know, when I first got here, we were able to fund the conversion of the locker room to a computer lab at the Warren WYCA. So the ARC program that Kathy leads up is spot on. Strong support from the state for their efforts and the federal government for their efforts when it comes to ARC, Appalachian Region Commission, which are one of the 4 districts in Ohio. 2 million, 1.2, I think that's a little bit higher, but that's roughly, and what the focus is on just the ability to help different parts of our community. I spent a lot of time saying we're not all transportation. We're economic development. We're able to help the communities with these types of grants. These are wins. Okay, now the fun stuff. Where are we going? So, yeah, I tell everybody that wants to listen to what we have to say, we got crazy ideas. I tell everybody that we're not afraid to swing and miss. If we get knocked down, we get back up. So I'm going to kind of just talk about, and they're a little bit all over, so just bear with me, and I'm going to just touch on them and try to move forward. If you have any more questions, I'll gladly dive in a little bit deeper, but I'm going to talk about some of the initiatives that we're looking at right now and attempting to deliver. One of my favorite projects is the Mahoning River dams. Remember, there was talk when I first came to Eastgate, first couple years, they said 9 years, $90 million, it'll never happen. Well, 2 dams out, 4 to be removed in the next year, 2 more additional dams in 2024, and it'll leave us one, the Hubbard, or I'm sorry, the we're looking to get out in 2025. It's a little more difficult, much more expensive, and then we certainly have to make sure our business partners along the river are made whole. So we have great conversations. We hope to have that one under what I'll call deconstruction in 2025. I think it's important that we are reclaiming our river by removing the dams. And if you don't understand what's happened, the dams put in there by the steel mills, a century ago. They trapped toxic material, and that sat there and built up. So these removals they remove the sludge, which is toxic. There's surveys to tell you how much we have to take. We get that out, and then we take the dam out, turns it to a free-flowing state. When it's a free-flowing state, it's cleaner. And then we have to use the river as an attraction. So the communities along the river work with them closely to come up with projects and utilize the river. And I just heard last week we actually have a company that once the river is complete and the dam's removed, is talking about whitewater rafting along the river. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with the river. And sometimes people go, what the heck are you touching the river for? What are you doing this? Quality of life is vital to revitalization. You have to have those kind of amenities in your area to keep the people here. And I'll talk about keeping people here in a little bit later conversation. Our coalition. We all heard the horror stories of difficulties that some companies trying to relocate here experience when it comes to water, wastewater, and electricity. We want to locate to our region, and it's difficult. We aren't set up. We aren't sharing resources. We aren't working together. So Eastgate worked with regional partners, engaged with a consultant to analyze the region's utility environment and identify challenges and opportunities for the area. The result of the 9-month study is the Power Coalition. It's providing outstanding water and electricity to the region. The coalition just kicked off last week. We have another meeting, and we want to continue to grow the initiative. It's just underway, but it's going to bring municipalities and suppliers to the table. What's most important, to partner and to collaborate. And James from MVSD reminds me collaboration is change. It means change. We have to work together. You have to share in the resources, share in the prosperity if we're going to move this region forward when it comes to economic development. We can't have infighting, and then watch companies go to Tennessee like we just seen. So once we get that established, we feel like through mutual agreements, and maybe eventually it works into a regional authority. I'm not going to say that. That's out in the change of the Ohio Revised Code. But a big step for this area would be mutual agreements and people sitting at the table collaborating. The Live Zone, logistics, innovation, vehicular electrification. This is an initiative that was started a couple years ago, really kind of focusing on the investment in the Lordstown area. We're looking to capitalize and expand on the companies moving into the region. Admittedly, we didn't know what we wanted to build. We were throwing stuff at a wall, seeing what sticks. There was an opportunity to put in for a raised grant, so we were going to take a stab at it. Fortunately, and we were unsuccessful, we knew it, but those of us that have some experience with federal grants realize you get knocked down, you get back up, submit. The third time's a charm, and we're going to have our fingers crossed for that also. But we didn't know what we were chasing, just pursuing funding. Fortunately, we were able to secure a grant through the Department of Transportation to study the opportunity to find a focus. First and foremost, the study identified it's not a Lordstown project, it's a regional project. And we hear that every day from our friends at the Chamber. Companies need to get into this area. Don't just look in Lordstown. They're looking at Warren, they're looking in Youngstown, they're looking at all counties. Most importantly now, we're moving forward with plans to develop an intermodal facility to expedite freight containers in and out of the area. Also the possibility of autonomous warehousing and distribution. I'm sure you're going to hear more from our keynote speaker, Matthew Chang, who's going to focus on that, but the opportunities to expand what we do well out there and capitalize on the investment out there, not only for the Lordstown area, but for the region, is very important. Those are a couple of the other things that we're still chasing. Our friend Baker, Randy Cole from Bright's here, been intricate in putting that together, and our team keeps the dream alive. But I feel very good on where we're going and be able to attract some additional funding here in the next round, which comes at the end of the year, and hopefully announcements early next year. Okay, now when I start this, I'm going to say this is a couple years down the road, but we are looking at interchange Interstate 80 and State Route 304. We're going to look for a feasibility study. We're partnering with ODOT to take a look at that. Eastgate, work with the Department of Transportation, Trumbull County Engineer, City of Hubbard, City of Youngstown, and both Liberty and Hubbard Township on the possibility of a new interchange on Interstate 80 with 304. The interchange would provide connectivity to US 62 Youngstown. And I'm sure there's some people in the room old enough to remember the old Hubbard Arterial when those plans were drawn up. That was, I think, the wrong chase at the wrong time and very expensive project. And I know those plans, I believe, were burned that we had 30 years ago. So we aren't. This is a more reasonable approach to provide access to the area of the city that is completely disconnected from the highway system. This would also development opportunities in vast areas of vacant land. So if tough read here, but it'd be a new interchange, an access road to state or US Route 62, and then access roads into the east side of Youngstown. And everybody knows 62, the interstate of 62, dead ends at Edward Street, no connectivity. We actually have the Minister of EDA from Washington, Alejandra Castilla, here last spring and could not believe, because we took her on the tour of the east side and parts of our city along that corridor, she could not believe the disconnect that they had from not having that access to a highway. And then opportunities in mega sites and vacant land. There's vacant land, there's opportunity for housing, there's opportunities on the east side took advantage of that if we can get this connector built, turn around and take advantage of that. Now, I will tell you, again, feasibility study years down the road, but if you don't start now, and so, I don't want anybody to leave here and say, Jim said we're building a new interchange at 304 and 80 and it's coming this summer. So I purposely said that because that'll make the headline in the paper. The next three initiatives, all directed as a result of Governor DeWine's administration to invest in Appalachia regions in Ohio. To be clear, the state of Ohio moved $500 million of ARPA funds into planning and development of transformational projects into the 4 Appalachia regions, which Eastgate with Ashtabula, Trumbull, Mahoney counties is one of those regions. So we're one of the 4. Those projects must meet at least one of the 3 criteria: downtown revitalization, healthcare, and/or workforce. Now, if you're like me, I love numbers, I love math. Straight math on that says $125 million per region. So we're excited about that opportunity to track those kind of funds And I keep saying if we get that transformational project, maybe we can take a little bit more from the other regions too. So we'll be very aggressive chasing projects. I love chasing funding. I love chasing projects. So more to come on all our projects, but I really want to focus. There's several projects that are out there. Our main focus is on three major ones. One's called the River of Opportunity. Eastgate, we were just awarded $1 million in planning grants for the Governor's Office of Appalachia to focus on transformational downtown revitalization projects. Focusing on communities along the river, we're working with a consultant and community stakeholders to develop plans to possibly create housing, urgent care, dental and mental health clinics, and/or public space, all within these downtown urbanized areas. Public and private partnerships are essential to be successful with these funds because these funds carry all the rules of ARPA and restrictions of ARPA. So it can only do so much. But I can tell you that we have many private investors lined up ready to move forward. And hats off to the city of Warren for their efforts and where they're at. They're ahead. And I'm glad we're going to catch up with our other communities. We're in the early stages of development. We'll continue to build out our team over the next couple of months and get more engaged with the communities along the river. But we got to be aggressive on this. The time frame, you have to have planning in place by the end of the year, and you're asking for development or construction dollars in the beginning of 2024. So all the consultants in the room understand that's aggressive time frame to move forward, but I believe we have a great consultant. MS Consultants is on board to assist us with the river. We have a great team in place, and we understand how to attract those funds by being successful getting the plans into development. The other one, the three that I want to touch on is the Lake to River Logistics Corridor. We received additional planning dollars through Governor's Office of Appalachia being made available at Eastgate to engage a consultant to study, and I got to read this one, multimodal freight logistics from Lake Erie to the Ohio River. The result would improve intermodal rail, truck, maritime linkage, identify mega sites, and recommend site readiness and infrastructure enhancement. That's a lot said, so I had to go to my notes there, but I didn't want to miss anything. Now picture this, we're only 100 miles from Lake Erie to the Ohio River. The corridor, if we just look a straight north-south corridor, crosses Interstate 80. Now, when you look at Interstate 80, that's how you get from the East Coast to the Midwest. 20% of the truck freight tonnage travels over Interstate 80 in the entire country. That's major, and I'm sure you guys realize that now. So we need to take advantage of that. Imagine the opportunities to move goods if we ready these mega sites, link the highway network, and upgrade this corridor. You created the east-west, north-south corridor that could rival any of those other connections in the country. We are engaging with a consultant, working with our friends in Ashtabula and our friends in Columbiana, and we're going to make that happen. I think what's unique is that connection to the east-west corridor too. So it's just not a north-south, it's east-west, and that infrastructure is in place east-west. It also mirrors the broadband feasibility study that we did a couple years ago that we received preliminary engineering work on. It's doing the plans right now, and we're waiting for an announcement hopefully in June for funding to secure the construction of that. We were part of a grant with Broadband Ohio. We need $20 million. The state of Ohio put an NTIA grant in for $80 million, which $20 million they want to give to us to build that. So we have the strong support from the state of Ohio, strong support from Broadband Ohio. We're waiting for the announcement on the grant, and we'll be able to put high-speed internet along that same corridor we're looking to capitalize on with a logistics corridor, and again, ties to one of the most traveled freight routes in the country. Those are wins, and we're going to make that happen. The third grant, and probably people have heard a lot about recently from the GOA, looks differently at a workforce initiative by creating a larger one, repopulation. I tell everybody, I say repopulation now once every hour, and 6 months ago I never said the word. So that's how things have changed. We shifted, we're agile, and we're going to dive into this. The numbers show that 7 people a day are leaving the area. The city of Youngstown, I know you've heard these numbers, 160,000 people 50 years ago, 60,000 today. Currently, we are hearing the needs from some of the industry moving into the area, Foxconn being a leader, of 5,000 workers, additional workers needed by 2026, and maybe 20,000 by 2030. We need to be aggressive to reverse this trend and repopulate the region. Eastgate is working with our regional partners, the Chamber and the Port Authority, to create the Office of Repopulation. Now, we currently have a consultant on board, Envision, and I know Emil and Ryan are here today too, that's turned around and has a three-pronged approach to repopulation. Retaining existing residents, stopping the young people from leaving the area after they get out of school, and keeping them here. Returning homegrown talent, bringing back the people that left and getting, once they see how good it is here, and take advantage of the area. And lastly, receive immigrants and refugees. We hope to have the framework in place by the end of the year. And I can tell you that what's important with those 3 R's and anything we're talking about when it comes to bringing people, keeping people here, bringing them back, we're going to have a marketing strategy. We need to talk about the good things in the Mahoning Valley, in Northeast Ohio. And we don't do that. We blame ourselves. We don't talk about the good things going on, the quality of life that you have here. You have a river that we're going to turn around and expand. You have entertainment, you have restaurants, your proximity to Cleveland and Pittsburgh, your amphitheaters, it's all here. And the cost of living is ridiculously low compared to other parts of the country. And I tell everybody, and the weather's getting a little bit better too. And now I'm gonna be that old guy. It used to snow, and I didn't see the grass from November to March, you know? So I don't know what happened to that, but I'm happy. So the weather is better. There's something to this climate change. So we do need to talk more about all the good things the Mahoning Valley has to offer. I believe that we'll be hitting the ground running here in the next 3 to 4 months with a marketing strategy, a marketing video with the loud music playing in the background, and just sharing that. And I don't even know what social media to take. That's past me, but we have young people here to turn around and fill that social media network with the good things going on in this Mahoning Valley. I also have to say, additionally, with the repopulation effort, Eastgate is independently but concurrently working on a housing assessment for the Mahoning and Trumbull counties, and then developing a housing strategy. Obviously, if you're going to bring more people back to the area, we need housing. So the assessment and then the strategy would include toolkits for receptive communities. Again, we're going to work with the stakeholders in the communities. We're not flying solo here. And open up opportunities for private investment. So I think the toolkit is making it quicker. You got to get the zoning, the permitting, the utilities lined up. Focus on where you're trying to get to. We met a couple of weeks ago at the Chamber with a company that's looking to take advantage of blocks that are vacant now because houses have been torn down or a school's been abandoned, and they want to build in 40 to 60 apartment units in those neighborhoods. They got a track record of working in 16 other states. Once you put that investment in a block of a neighborhood, the investment starts showing in the houses around it. You know, so we're not looking to create new neighborhoods way down in southern Mahoning County or north. We got to build up the neighborhoods that we have and bring them back to where we need to be. Very aggressive task list. But I hope you focused on 2 common themes on all the initiatives that we talked about. Partnerships. I thought Justin did a great job of announcing it, talking about it, explaining it. It's very important. None of this is possible if we don't work together for regional prosperity. And when I say partnerships, it's a unified vision. It's helping each other. It's working together. It's not what's good for me. It's what's good for the region. And again, when we went to Columbus for the drive-in, and there's a Washington fly-in, and I've been on several of them, and anytime I talk to any of the legislators, whether it's state or federal, they all talk about now that the community in this area has come together. And it's important that we continue to focus on partnerships if we're going to prosper. The second common theme in everything I talked about, and we say it in our office all the time: study, plan, implement. Now, I'm all engineer, and I run a planning organization, and the engineers in the room and the planners in the room usually don't mix real well, because just want to plan, study, and not build anything. Well, we got a great mix of that talent. And I know that there's people that understand that because I look at Tony, and we used to have at ODOT studies that sat on the shelf for 12, 15 years and never got built. So no disrespect to anybody. We got a great team that understands how to work with each other now and how to be successful. And I tell everybody, I just want to build things. So let's go. That's our two common themes. In closing, I want to leave you with this. You cannot plan without partners. You cannot attract funding without a plan. And you can't deliver without funding. We're very fortunate to have a room full of community and business leaders as partners, and I can assure you here at Eastgate we plan on delivering. Thank you.
Study, plan, implement. Jim says planners plan. Well, we plan to stay on time, and Jim, as an engineer, you're a little over budget, so we'll roll this back in. So it's always impressive to get a rundown of what an incredible team can, has, and will accomplish. And I think Jim left off on an incredible place to transition into our next guest, Marvin Logan. Marvin and his leadership is emblematic of the purpose-driven reason why we embrace many of these special initiatives focused on community investment and improving quality of life. Marvin Logan is the president and executive director of OhioCED Center for Technology in Youngstown, Ohio, an organization devoted to providing colorful, creative, and engaging supplemental STEM education experiences that develop innovation, problem-solving, and critical thinking skills in youth. Prior to serving in his new role, he was the director of programming for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Southeastern Michigan, where his duties included leading the Pony Ride Incubator, STEM, and youth leadership development programming. Marvin is an award-winning nonprofit professional that has served youth across the globe with organizations such as Inspiring Minds and Usher's New Look. His areas of expertise are strategic planning, programming and resource development, community and economic development, and equity and inclusion. He holds a BA from Kent State University and a Master's of Nonprofit Administration from the University of Notre Dame. He's a proud member of the Gamma Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. He is married to the love of his life, Mrs. Taylani Keith of Akron. Help me welcome Marvin Logan.
Good morning, everyone. Thankfully, I have the tall task of following up Jim. I don't know how much I'm going to measure up to that, but I can assure I'll at least be on time. So it is great to be here with you this morning. I'm so fortunate to have the opportunity to share with you. So what we'll discuss today is a little bit of my backstory, how that connects to the work that Eastgate is doing and what it could mean for the Valley. So for those of you that do not know me, I am a Warren native, a West Side Raider, born and raised. I was a GM retiree and a UAW worker that worked with GM and Delphi Automotive. So during my lifetime, my father was a single parent when he was raising us. And miraculously, he was a musician, not a musician, a magician. He often found ways to invent more time because somehow, as a man who would get up and go in early and work late to make sure that he could make as much money as he needed to take care of my sister and I, my father never missed a practice. He never missed a dance recital. He never missed a game. And he instilled in us at a very young age a passion for learning and discovery. We were not allowed to go outside and play in the summertime until we read something or we wrote something. And he used to tell me all the time, you can be any and everything that you want to be. Often, like any kid, I thought my father was out of his mind, and he was just simply telling me what all the kids' parents told him. However, as I grow up, I sometimes will find myself into trouble. Had lots of energy, was rambunctious. There are a few people in the room that have actually known me long enough to know some of these stories. But I was a bit of a nuisance in the classroom. And I made it difficult because I was high achieving, so you couldn't just throw me out. I was in the gifted programs, but I needed something more. I needed something to give me an opportunity to really channel my energy. So when I was a freshman, I was playing varsity football at Warren G. Harding, and anybody who knows anything about the Valley, doing that as a freshman is a bit of a feat. So naturally, it fed into the worst parts of my ego, and I stopped doing the things that I needed to do in the classroom. I started chasing girls. I started going out and partying with my friends all the time. And right around this time, a young opportunity to play collegiate football in Warren, Ohio, decided to come home and start an organization. The name of that organization was Inspiring Minds, and I was one of the first students from Inspiring Minds that used to meet down Wall Street McDonald's, where there would be 5 of us, and all we were doing was coming together and doing homework. And if you follow the organization now, they do a little bit more. But I'm part of the first group of students to take a trip. That trip was to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and at the time, we were getting ready to play the Mentor Cardinals in the championship game, and we were being coached by Coach Tom McDaniels, who is really serious about football. And I thought to myself, I really need to take this trip, but I have to figure out a way to convince Coach McD that this is the right thing to do. So Derek and I went to his office, and we had a 2-hour conversation. And he said, you know what, Marvin, I think that you're right. And what I thought was, it's Warren G. Harding. We'll be back in the playoffs next year. I'll have plenty more opportunities to do this. So I ended up skipping the game and taking that trip. And it wound up being probably one of the most important days of my life. While there, had an opportunity to meet Usher Raymond, who's pretty cool. Multi-Grammy award-winning artist, sports team owner, doing all this really crazy cool stuff. And I thought to myself, I'll probably never get a chance to meet another person like this again. So I walk up to him, and we start having a full-blown conversation. And then he introduces me to 2 other gentlemen. One by the name of Sean Wilson, who was the president of Usher's New Look, and the other was Gavin McGuire, who was the director of programming. And at this time, I've been introduced to these 3 black men who lead nonprofit organizations, are doing critical work in communities, and somehow someone paid them enough to pay their bills. And I thought, this is what I want to do with my life. One day, I would like to become a nonprofit leader. And so started my career with New Look, working in Atlanta, and then I got an opportunity to come home and work with Inspiring Minds and start something new. IM did a really great job of getting students through high school. We had a 100% graduation rate. And unfortunately, after that, the same support systems that allowed those students to be successful were nowhere to be found. And so I came back to Inspiring Minds to start our transition department. And for a little over 3 years, I got to really do what I love, and that's working with young people and helping them find a future. However, by the time that came around, I reached a little bit of a ceiling at Inspiring Minds, and I wanted to be able to do more. I wanted to be able to grow more, I wanted to be able to serve more, and I wanted to be able to challenge myself more in my career field. And at the time, there were no opportunities available in the Valley. So I once again had to pack up my things, and I moved to Detroit, Michigan with all of my things packed up in a car, and I went to work for the CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Southeastern Michigan, who was Sean Wilson, and the COO of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Southeastern Michigan, who was Gavin McGuire. And we got to do some really, really incredible work, and this is where Jim and I have a lot in common. We're really aggressive, and we come up with crazy, bonkers ideas that everyone thinks that we are out of our mind. And while in Detroit, we invented this concept that oftentimes when you are working with young people and trying to push them towards career success, it's often too late. By the time people start talking about your resume writing and things when you're a junior in college, it's too late. Usually when people start to try to have conversations about what you're gonna do after high school and they start the conversation when you are a junior. It is too late. And so we came up with this concept. Why don't we create earn-to-learn opportunities for high schoolers and pay them? And the first response ended up being several of the ones that you see in the room. You're gonna pay kids to learn? That doesn't make any sense. Well, that program ended up producing 100% success rates for all of the students who participated. It is now 4 years in. We have had students that have presented at New York Fashion Week. We have had students who have given presentations to all the owners in the NBA during NBA All-Star Weekend. And we actually just had our first student graduate with a computer science degree from Wayne State University. And I thought, what if I had the opportunity to do all of this crazy, cool, inventive stuff that I've done all across the country, all across the world, serving young people, and what if we had the opportunity to bring that back to the Valley? And so enter, who I believe is still in the room, Chuck George, a fun lunchtime in about 6 months, and I landed with the largest STEM organization in the Mahoning Valley and got to fulfill that promise that I made to myself as a 13-year-old kid that one day I would get to lead a nonprofit organization. And that incredible feat, if that wasn't enough, Ohio ended up being in the middle of probably what I would describe as the greatest economic development surge since the turn of the last century. If you have not been paying attention and you have not been reading the news, Ohio has become the tech hub of the Midwest. It began with Intel announcing the build of 2 semiconductor plants down in Franklin County, but has exploded. It seems that every 2 weeks there is a new entity that is announcing their intent to build multi-million-dollar facilities here in the Mahoning Valley. I'm sorry, in the state of Ohio, but also in the Mahoning Valley. And why is the work that Eastgate is doing and the work that OWOW is doing so critically important? STEM education now is probably more important than it has ever been. Dare I say it, the United States has been losing the battle for STEM education to many of our global partners. We are behind on quantum computing. We are behind on engineering. And those things pose a great risk to the future and the success of our nation. So at OWOW, over the last 4 years, we've been able to not only provide services to over 1 million visitors to our physical location, but another 500,000 visitors outside of those walls, continuing to do curriculum-based STEM intervention programming, making sure that those students have the opportunity to achieve success in their science and mathematics courses. And we came up with a crazy idea at OWOW, hey, we do project and challenge-based learning better than anyone else. What if we can put career components and aspects to it? What if we can use challenges to teach students engineering? What if we can use challenges to teach students app development? How can we take those young people from saying one day, I want to be an engineer, one day I want to be an app developer, to I am an engineer, I am an app developer. And so the work that OWOW and Eastgate does in tandem is critically essential, not just for the people who currently live here, but for all of those folks who eventually want to be able to make the Mahoning Valley their home. And so I'm incredibly excited to be one of the Valley's boomerang stories. And I tell Jim all the time, I'm on the phones, I'm calling all of my friends, everybody who thought that I was crazy when I first came back to the Valley, I'm calling them and saying, hey, you're up next. And so what all of us can continue to do in order to make jobs for folks like me and Jim easier. Tell the stories that we have coming out of the Mahoning Valley. Talk about how we have become one of, if not the best future hubs for electric vehicle production. Tell them about the ETC that's just down the street. Tell them about Eastern Gateway Community College continuing to make an impact on college affordability with being able to offer students a smooth pathway. Tell them about how, even though people get annoyed with all the mayor's orange barrels in downtown Youngstown, that this is not our parents' valley. This is not our parents' region. This is a place that is vibrant, full of opportunity, continuing to push the envelope and continuing to consider things that we never have before. So when you wonder how you can do your job, simply tell our story. So thank you very much, Jim. Thank you, everybody, for taking time with me this morning.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That was a cheap one. Marvin, we so appreciate you spending some time with us this morning, and a very special thank you for the enrichment and education you provide to our young residents. You are truly leaving a profoundly positive impact on our next generations. And speaking of next generations, what a wonderful transition into STEM education to STEM application. I'm so excited to introduce our next speaker, Matthew Chang, who is responsible for some of the largest autonomous robot and autonomous vehicle deployments in the world. To continue the journey, he has set his sights on enabling technologies such as battery electric technologies and supply chain innovation. In 2017, he founded Chang Industrial, an engineering firm specializing in autonomous systems, and has led groundbreaking projects around the world. He is a featured speaker at the world's top universities and industry events. He and his firm have received multiple awards of recognition for this groundbreaking work. Matthew Chang is the founder of the Jacksonville Venture Competition and is an outside-the-box thinker. He is a thought leader who grasps technology's ability to disrupt the world as we know it, and he embraces that change with an optimistic view of the future. Please help me welcome Matthew Chang.
And they can put together a program here. Nice work, Eastgate. Marvin, as our moderator alluded to, when you get those students trained up, we're going to put them to work. And hopefully some of the message you see today around technology kind of resonates about what the application of this next generation technology could look like right here in Eastern Ohio. I'm going to hold you to that. Yeah, let's be friends. But before I get out of here, if anybody wants to connect, let's make sure that we do that, because I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm not just about Jacksonville, Florida. This is an American initiative, and I'm going to go a little off script. They told me I have a little bit extra time here. It is super important to make sure that as a nation, we're being very strategic with our direction, and that we're informing our youth about the options, but also creating opportunity for them. I have children myself. I want them to go into the field of their choosing, but technology will be a part of any field going forward. So we're gonna hopefully connect the dots on some things that have been happening, maybe behind the scenes or out of sight with technology around the country, and then also we're gonna tie it to hopefully a very practical application and roadmap for what we can do in this community. So I was told that I have an hour, and so for the Youngstown State people, that's natural. You're like, one class, yeah, no problem. But for everyone else, you're like, I haven't paid attention to anything for an hour in a long time that wasn't Netflix. So we're actually going to split this up, and just to keep it with more of a flow, we're going to do kind of part A and part B. Part A is what's out there in the world that you may or may not have known about, and also I just want to make sure that I show you what it looks like. So we've got a couple videos loaded up for you. And then part B is going to be applying what you just saw to this location and your future here. And so the moderator's going to get up and give us a break. So if you guys have questions, make sure you get your questions in. Part A is kind of like advanced manufacturing. Part B is smart supply chain. So what do? I mean, we do whatever our customers tell us to do. And our customers, by choice, we choose customers that have the most interesting use cases out there. We love novel engineering. We love first-of-a-kind solutions. We do not like the cookie-cutter stuff. That is highly ironic because I have a civil engineering degree from Georgia Tech. And as the civil engineers in the room know, and I hope I don't offend you, is we design the same stuff over and over again, right? We use standards that were written on those 30-year-old plans that Jim referenced, and we're still applying that today. Why? Because it has to work and it has to be safe. We can't afford any sort of too much innovation and bridges fall down, right? So it's highly ironic that I dodged all the electric and software classes, and then now I lead a company that's based solely on that. So to students that might pick up this message, you don't know what the future holds, right? The future will tell you what you're going to do, and so that I've learned that lesson the hard way. So these are just fancy words. What do? We design technology applications that are novel. And then this is a little bit of our journey, but since the moderator gave this very long introduction to me, I'll back up a little bit and say that before I started focusing on American innovation with my own engineering company, I traveled the world setting up advanced manufacturing facilities. I've lived and worked in China. I have a professional engineering license in China. I established an engineering office and advanced manufacturing facilities in Singapore and Malaysia, and I've done that in numerous countries on a consulting basis, including Ireland and countries in the Middle East. And so in my world, I've had a great survey of what's out there in the world. I've seen the top companies and what they're doing globally. And then I was, I guess, a little Pollyannish at that phase of my career. I was just, trying to learn. I was out there doing what I was told. And I was probably part of the problem, right? I was exporting manufacturing capacity to places around the world and not focusing on domestic industry here at home. Now that I get to choose what I do, we're very focused on American innovation. We are very focused on reshoring, bringing things back. And in our pipeline of projects at my company, we're doing things like metal fabrication. I never heard of metal fabrication for the first 15 years of my career because we weren't doing it actively in America, or we weren't expanding into it to where you would need new engineering services. We're bringing that back, and with everything that's coming back into the country now, with the reshoring of production, the reshoring of technology, it has to have a high-tech component to it to survive here. And the reason is your competitor is overseas. So with an overseas competitor, they have a lower wage base. There's always complaints about things being fabricated more cheaply overseas, and maybe their government supporting them. So when things come back to the US, it has to be done in an automated, high-tech fashion. So I'll show you a little bit about what that looks like. This is a little bit of our portfolio. As you can see, we are restless, and we just can't choose which industry we want to be in. I got an MBA at Jacksonville University in Florida, and they tell you, choose your sector. And so the first thing I did was just not listen to that at all, and we're all over the place. So we're in advanced manufacturing facilities that are making things in places like South Carolina and Tennessee, places that have basically no strategic advantage to Eastern Ohio. There's nothing those places have that this place doesn't have other than the ability to hit the ball and connect when you swing. And so we're also working in your project here. We had a great intro from Jim on Lordstown and the Live Zone. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We work with startups. The top right corner is ag tech and also advanced manufacturing for American-made vehicles. In the lower left, we do smart city projects. We were the concept designers for Jacksonville Transportation Authority's project that is now sponsored by the U.S. Department of Transportation. So again, that's I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's study, plan, implement. Is that it? Okay. That's study, plan, implement. That project is now backed up by $300 million in funding in Jacksonville, so Jacksonville can have the first truly autonomous transit system in the country. And then on the lower right, we do get called into action from our local partners. We were parachuted in to do a advanced manufacturing facility in the heart of Taipei in Taiwan. That's local production for local consumption. And the problem was they needed to make all the plethora of products that you make that you have in the US from Coca-Cola, but you had to do it on a 7-story tall site. And the reason is there is no land in Taipei. And so we had to take a small piece of property and figure out how to do much with it. So we were up to the task on that. Before I go on, I'm going to also make a connection that about my company. We're a Christian company with a biblical worldview. We're also committed to innovation and the future. And you might say, well, what do those two things have in common? The Bible sounds really old. So I'm going to go to quickly a parable in the Bible, and you don't have to be a Christian to understand this, is the parable of the 5 talents, or the parable of the talents. And the long and short of it is that there was one servant was given one talent and he buried it. He was later rebuked by his master for being lazy with what he had been given and entrusted with. And it was on loan from his master, his talents were. The next was the 2 talent and the 5 talent servants. They did the same exact thing. They went at once into the marketplace and they wagered what they were given. One was given 2 portions, one was given 5 portions. They both multiplied what they had been given in the marketplace, and then when their master returned to take back possession of what he had given them, they were praised. You guys have a 5 talent leader with Jim sitting here. And I don't know Jim very well. We've interacted, I guess, briefly in a professional capacity, but that presentation you just saw from your executive director of Eastgate is rare. Again, I get to travel the world, I get to travel the country, and look at practical applications in areas that you would look at and say are very successful, that they have been doing great with economic development, workforce improvement, and all the different things that you're trying to accomplish here. But leadership is the key, and the vision in leadership to connect the dots in a long-term pipeline with continuity and consistency is just like youth, Marvin, it's showing up, right? I mean, the number one thing you can ask for your youth is to show up. Well, you've got a group here that is showing up, and they are connecting the dots, and they are wagering it all. They are taking what has been given, and they are confidently going into the marketplace and wagering it for the benefit of this community. So that's a quick segue, and now we're going to get into meat and potatoes and talk about robots. We're in a new paradigm. Previously, as you guys know, you have a lot of manufacturing capacity here. There has always been automation. People that have worked in factories and on lines, there's always been automation or robotics out there, but it wasn't connected. And so what we embarked on a couple years ago is this journey with a few of our best customers to connect automation, which becomes islands of intelligence, with autonomy. And so we wanted to go from islands to networks. That's the big idea. If that's possible, that means any manufacturing facility or any automated asset can be retrofit to be part of a dynamic network, okay? And so this is where new words come in, cobotics, if you've heard that word, collaborative robotics. In the future, by definition, robots should be people safe. That includes driverless cars and includes factory robots and e-commerce robots. No matter what you're interacting with, it should be people safe. It also needs to have intelligence, and it needs to have rules around things like inventory. Most people don't think of inventory as being critical, unless I ask you what the supply chain on your food was. Suddenly, it gets interesting, right? Where did my food come from, and how do I know that it's good when I get it? Your prescription drugs. How do we know the chain of custody that that drug was made correctly and that it was transferred properly to get to the right person and be in the right state when you received it? That's when inventory starts to come alive. And when we have people in the process, inventory is a little bit less important because truck drivers open trucks and they look at things, and people stock goods and they look at things. But as those things become more robotic in the future, we need to have a very good understanding of the traceability of where our goods are made, where they stop along the way, and how they get to us. We've seen what lack of intelligence does in the supply chain over the last couple of years, right? This bullwhip effect you saw of, oh, I can't get toilet paper, then I can't get baby formula. That's all part of an inventory problem. So what are some of the tools that are out there right now? These are, on the bottom right is a Waymo vehicle. You guys should have seen, Waymo was the driverless car company started by Google. You may have seen, if you're kind of a tech nerd, that they have now received approval for full autonomous self-driving as a robo-taxi. So they're operating in 2 communities right now, the greater Phoenix area and San Francisco area, as an autonomous robo-taxi. Families are getting in, and there is no driver in the driver's seat. The car drives itself, and that's been approved by the government. On the upper right is an example of the types of shuttles they're testing out down in Jacksonville. Jacksonville is going into procurement of their first fleet of vehicles by the end of this year, and so the testing needs to come to an end, and the actual driving needs to start. That one's on a similar roadmap of you have to convince all the stakeholders that what you're doing is safe as an autonomous operation, as something that's been automated with no human behind the wheel. The challenge is to convince people that something is safe, the automation has to be safer on a magnitude of, say, 10x, because every incident now falls under a microscope. Because you say, well, I thought this thing was smart. How did we have an accident? How did we have an injury? Next, I was delighted to learn this morning that one of my use cases, the autonomous tractor in the upper left, the Monarch tractor, is actually made here. So I wonder how many people knew that. I didn't. And that's a fantastic use case. That is the main use case of that tractor right now is for the wine industry. And in California and any wine-producing region, you have a high amount of touch on your grapes and your vines, a lot of maintenance. But you only have this one rush to harvest, at the very end of the year. But throughout the season, you have to travel up and down the vineyard, performing tasks, based on pests or pruning or whatnot. So the Monarch tractor is a great use case because it shows how we can get some of this manual labor out of the field. If it works for grapes, it works for berries. It works for a lot of row-type field crops. And so for you guys to be part of that right now, just a little piece of that story of that coming together is incredible. I believe this is going to completely revolutionize agriculture as a fleet of these products come on board. You should also have seen, if you follow in buying AI and robotic companies, so they can try to get smarter with their tractors. So this is here, and it's now, and it exists, but it is coming to a field near you, I guess is the right way to say it. On the right, you guys should recognize that one, right, by now? Spot the robot dog. Spot the robot dog is awesome, but even as a robotics person that deals with this every day, I have no idea what Spot does. Spot is so cool at a trade show, and I've never been in a manufacturing facility or an e-commerce facility or a hospital or anywhere that wants automation and see Spot doing something useful other than impressing you on how cool it is, right? But the point, Spot can walk through doors and go upstairs. So when you're looking for what's the dexterity of robotics today, they're incredibly dexterous. He would be able to come in this room if he wanted to. And then on the bottom left, drones are so popular. I'm sure everybody out here has seen somebody playing with a drone recreationally. The drone vehicles are very popular too now. And so people are developing ATV-style vehicles that are drones. So again, Father's Day is coming up. And if you, hint, hint. So let's tie it to something that actually works. These are two use cases that our firm designed and deployed that deal with autonomous robots. There's a picture of one there, and I'm going to show you a video right after this of what they actually look like. And this is the first time that manufacturing facilities have gone completely to dependence on autonomous technology. Self-driving robots that are people safe, that navigate around factories. Once this use case has been deployed, the industry is different now because the idea of proximity no longer matters. So I'm sure either a lot of people in here have worked in a manufacturing plant or have parents that have worked in one. In a traditional manufacturing plant with line-style production, proximity is essential. The whole thing doesn't work if things are too far apart and it's inefficient or there's too much cross-traffic. Now, with autonomous robotics, now that no person has to move things around, it really doesn't matter. Proximity doesn't matter anymore. You can retool any existing facility to be efficient with autonomous robots. That was an idea a couple years ago. It's now been proven. And so we've got just some stats up here, in case you're very detailed, but we're moving pallets, we're moving boxes, we're moving raw materials for line in feeds, and we're moving all the things that you would see in a factory that are buzzing around, whether pallet or human load form factor. Let's see if we can get this video to play, if we have to do anything. So this was the first time that we took an autonomous robot, which is the little silver guy. He's the size of a carry-on luggage. And we just connected it to a prototype line. It's just any factory line. It's automated. So what you have is the marriage between automated on the right and autonomous on the left. Okay, we did it one time, so it might work, right? We're feeling good. Now let's scale up. What you're going to see here is a bunch of dots on screen. That's the laser vision of the vehicle, and it's working in the dark. That old joke about learn to code, most people will learn the robot, believe it or not. That's going to be very common. Here's real factory workers working on robots as we get them ready for prime time. Robots think in terms of software. And so this is an example of what the software looks like. That's on a tablet. They're also incredibly precise. So what you see here is a driverless forklift that is making a pick that is a very technical pick, but it's based on the high quality machine vision of the forklift. This was us now deploying robots into a factory setting. They're going to go pick up those carts. Those carts in the operation today are loaded with materials based on the manufacturing needs. And then we put some boxes in the way just to confuse them. The vehicles went right around it. They didn't really care. They were probably a little bit annoyed that we made them late, but otherwise it worked. Then my lead engineer is very devious. He did another test where he packed them all in a basement and then he turned off the lights. And they could still see because they're looking with a type of vision called LiDAR, laser vision. And so this is getting closer to the state of lights out manufacturing, if you've heard that phrase. We are getting close to that in terms of complexity. And then what you see here is ergonomics. So yes, we're lifting heavy things. No, we don't want people to have injuries. So we're also looking for how to do kind of robotic tool assist to augment the human. So they have a very light load to pick, but they're still doing a heavy-duty manufacturing process. This is our simulation type software. So we run the factory usually for a full year on a supercomputer overnight, or it might take a few days, and then we see where we broke it. And then this is just a couple more views. If you were working in a factory with these robots, you would have a tablet, and this would be a screen view that you interact with every day. So you're now supervising a fleet of robots, and you're trying to make sure the robots are successful. It takes a little reframe of mind than driving the forklift yourself. But all the people that are operating this were forklift operators. And then this just shows you a little bit of again, what it looks like. We're putting a pallet away that needs to go to inventory. That pallet was just manufactured. So those are manufactured goods, probably bound for Walmart or something like that. And we're just kind of demonstrating the fact that the robots can go get it from somewhere and bring it from somewhere. Also, the screen view on the right is synchronized, so if you can find the little green robot connected to the blue line on the right, those are live, and the green dots are live. That's the computer vision coming off of the robot. Okay, so I show this as a means of being transparent and open. This is my design guide. I made this. This is how we design robot systems. If you want to copy it, you're more than welcome. I've said that a lot, and I've never had anyone follow up with extra questions and like, hey, I'm trying the formula, it didn't quite come out right. But this is kind of the inventory of componentry that goes into being able to do autonomous manufacturing or autonomous e-commerce distribution. And then finally, we're gonna take a break on showing you what smart factories look like. Just go through the economics. So in terms of the economics, using autonomous robots compared to paying a worker to move things all day, every day is 1/10 the cost. And one of the reasons is, and that's based on a 3-shift factory, so it's based on a factory that works around the clock, is you buy one robot, but it works all day, all night. Whereas as humans, we bring them in on the shift and we pay for shifts, and we have variable labor costs like overtime and holiday time. For forklifts, it's a little bit lower. Automatic forklifts or autonomous forklifts are about 1/5 the cost of paying for a forklift driver. And so what we've seen is, you might be wondering, what about jobs? Because we already heard about economic development. In all of our factories where we've deployed, we've never had a layoff. And the reason is, manufacturing plants, e-commerce plants have a natural amount of attrition. So they have a turnover rate that the HR people are very aware of. And there's a certain number of people kind of filtering out every year and more onboarding. What we do in all the factories we deploy is we do a jobs training program. And we say, who wants to upskill to be robotic technician? Who wants to upskill to be, to work with the machine interfaces? Who wants to upskill from forklift driver to factory line operator? And everybody gets an opportunity to volunteer in upskilling. Then, as in partnership with our customers, training is provided. They go to basically robot boot camp or factory line boot camp, whatever it is. they develop those new skills, and then we put them on the go-live commissioning of the systems. So those are the same factory workers that had a manual kind of mundane job that then go into the deployment of the robotics. They're the ground team, and you saw a picture of one earlier. Once they are on that team, there's a tremendous amount of pride that comes with, I'm working with high technology. I got this job as a forklift driver. Now I'm commanding a fleet of robots. Additionally, they get a pay raise. They're now highly competitive workers. In one facility we did, it was very close to a BMW car factory. And so once the employee's title changed from manual worker to robotic technician, well, that's a title they had over at BMW. So that person's pay had to go up commensurate with what BMW is paying. So what we've seen is kind of an amazing empowerment of the worker. There's, for all the stats around bringing people back, we also have this issue of it's hard to find workers right now for manual labor jobs. We're making employers that choose to make and ship goods in the United States more competitive with the other companies they compete with in terms of attracting talent. Because if I go to work for the company that's embraced technology, they're going to pay for me to learn how to use it. And then that's a skill that is very portable for the rest of my career. And I didn't go to college, I learned it on the job. So that's what we have here. And on the right-hand side is the human load considerations. The other thing that we do is we dramatically decrease injury rates. So we pay very close attention to industry standard injury rates and then job-specific injury rates. We record it through an OSHA process called NIOSH. And what we do is we try to make sure that everybody's physical demands of their job by a factor of 3. So we look at the total amount of lifting and odd object thing and team lifting and stretching that you might be doing for your manual labor job throughout the day. And once you've been augmented by robotics and cobotics, we want you to have 3 times less physical load. What that's resulted in also is less turnover. We find that people in very tough physical jobs are leaving their jobs really quick. And so what we're trying to do is help our employers keep people to build careers at their place of employment by having an easier job physically and new skills. And so we're going to take a quick pause, and I think our moderator is going to ask a couple questions.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Sorry. Get our microphone turned on here. Everyone will notice on their tables there are index cards. So if you have questions for Matthew, please feel free. Fill out those index cards. We've got staff running around. Just kind of hold them up. We'll collect those cards and we'll turn those into questions here. And we have a couple to start off. With your background in civil engineering, what motivated you to found Chang Industrial and dive into automated technologies?
Yeah, so that's why did I start the company? I was already working with high-end automation because I was doing factories, but I started the company because I got fired. And and I went home super sad because I thought I was doing great. We were doing a company, I was leading a department and an office. I was leading the Florida office. I had hired everybody. I was recruiting the companies, and I was just kind of on cloud 9. I was a little less humble, a little more arrogant at that time, and I couldn't understand why. I'm like, why would they fire me and my whole team? Well, new CEO, new strategy, that whole office was gone in a day. And so I went home, and then my wife gave me about 4 seconds of sympathy. She's not known for that. And then she goes, well, you want to start a company, now's the time. You don't have a job. So that's what started it.
All right, one with a little local flavor. What are automated manufacturers looking for when locating a new factory, and how has the live zone helped? What else needs to happen now?
So what are they looking for? The number one thing they're looking for is workforce. That is the number one thing. So even if you do a highly automated manufacturing plant that's a new here in Eastern Ohio, it's still going to require several hundred workers, even if it's highly automated. And so the number one thing they want is workforce, and they want to be taken care of by the whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or Eastgate or whoever's welcoming them, and they want to feel special. That's the second thing is every company wants to feel like they're the big fish in the small pond and that their contribution to the economy makes a difference. And then Live Zone, I'm not sure Live Zone is mature enough to be making an impact yet. I wouldn't know about that. I think it's getting set up to be a very compelling story in the future of your company recruitment.
So in addition to pavement markings, what other technology can AV use for route guidance? Is it GPS or something else?
I missed that.
Sure. In addition to pavement markings, what other technologies can AV use for route guidance? Is it GPS or something else?
Oh, can I have to ask the Michael Baker team for permission to share a secret. Okay, all right, we got it. We're here at in partnership with Michael Baker, who's a great partner of our company, and they are serving this community as an engineering and planning firm. But there's a couple new technologies. Number one is you can do visual monuments. So the concept of precisely locating a vehicle is called telematics, and to have accurate telematics on the location of a vehicle, if the vehicle is using laser vision, lasers are very accurate in measuring distance and location. So if you can put a physical monument that the vehicle can see, then it's going to precisely locate. That's not ideal. What if you don't have line of sight? What if somebody's blocking your monument or standing in front of you? Then the other technology that we're very bullish on is ultra wideband beacons. That's a very unobtrusive technology. It would go, you may have seen a couple 5G antennas around town, but you probably haven't appreciated how many have been added. It's a very unobtrusive technology because it's so compact. This is similar. It would be unseeable to you. It would just kind of blend in with the light poles in the landscape. And ultra wideband beacons provide basically a signal communication that's similar to the laser accuracy.
Very cool. So we'll have one more question for now. We'll come back and do a second round of questions when you wrap your presentation, and I think we've got a couple. But feel free, keep filling out those cards, and we'll keep coming around to collect. But what is the biggest piece of advice you can give our communities and industry leaders on how to embrace and advance the autonomous technologies?
I would focus on, to advance autonomous technologies, I would focus on small scale. The concept that most economic developers have is that every win has to be 1 million square feet and 1,000 jobs, that kind of paradigm. But that's very win-lose, and I'm convinced how much technology transfer and knowledge transfer comes to an area when it's just large-scale manufacturing. So if Tesla was to set up here tomorrow, would you learn a lot about Tesla's technology? Would the citizens learn a lot about that, or would they just work in a factory putting together Teslas, right? So it's my belief that we work in a knowledge economy now, and that with every win, you want to connect your local university, your merging workforce through students, that you want to connect those and build knowledge here. That knowledge is permanent. It cannot be taken away. And even if a company fades or a product goes out of style, which you've seen happen in this community over the years, then you still have the knowledge. And those are your future entrepreneurs. Those are your future collaborators and engineers and innovators, are the people that have built firsthand knowledge. So I personally like, for a community like Eastern Ohio, I like small scale manufacturing. I'd say as many 50,000 square foot factories that are capable of prototyping would be ideal. And yes, the big ones are good. Those put people to work and they generate a lot of cash flow for the region. But the small ones are where the knowledge is made, and that's where people get very creative and take ownership. All right, super. So now we're gonna jump into the so what. So the purpose of showing you all the robots in factories was basically just to say it's here. It's here. It's being done. It's not widely adopted yet. We're talking probably 2% industry penetration with what you just saw. So the ball's up in the air for who wants to grab it, who wants to go next, and of course we are talking confidentially to clients about who's going to try to do that across all their manufacturing or distribution network. But let's connect it to the assets that you have here on the ground. What do you have? Well, Jim set the stage nicely. You have America's supply chain running right through your region. You have 20% of freight, and not just freight running through here, but you have a diverse assets around railroads, port facilities, you've got turnpikes and interstates, and I get confused when I look at all the stuff that you guys have going through this region. It's kind of mind-boggling. So how do you put that to work, right? We global supply chain that may have been invisible to a lot of us up until 2019, but in 3 years it's been very visible, right? Oh, I need baby formula, and I can't find it. The one that we ran out of at my house recently was children's Advil, and all the moms had this like secret network to let each other know when Target got it in, on how much children's meds you could buy, because the moms were just descending. Like, how do you run kids' meds? I mean, how is that even possible, right? And so that's what you're seeing is the effect of a global supply chain. And so you guys are a big part of that. You contribute. LiveZone is the use case. I really think what you guys have with LiveZone being developed is incredibly futuristic and very, very forward-thinking. In my intro, they said I've got an optimistic view of the future. Absolutely. I'm incredibly interested in how creative thinking like this can leapfrog traditional industries. Do you need to build the Port of Los Angeles here to be competitive? No, that's not your sweet spot. They have that, but they also have a mess on their hands, right? What do you have? You have a blank slate. You can write your own future, and I think with that, you can leave a lot of the legacy technologies and mistakes in the past, and you can just go right out there for what's in the future. So I'm going to show you real quick, this is a real facility, and just see for yourself, what autonomous logistics looks like. So I didn't talk during that because I wanted to drive home that you didn't see a human in any of that imagery, right? That is a hustling, bustling logistics center that's actually in the that's not exactly what we're suggesting needs to happen here. I show that just so that you have an example that there was a group, in this case Rotterdam, the Port of Rotterdam, that they decided we want to have freight move by itself. It's just going to ships are going to magically show up. They're going to magically unload themselves, and the containers are going to shake themselves out and get organized for their onward shipment by themselves. And then they did it, right? And so that, again, I don't know that we're quite going for that level of container density here in Eastern Ohio. There's not really a point for that, but it shows you that with kind of when there's a will, there's a way, and the base layer technology is out there. So as we use use cases like that to inspire ourselves in LiveZone, we have to think about like what are we really trying to accomplish. And there was also a statement earlier today about partners, that partners are incredibly important. That's the first bullet point that we had was business partners and employees. We have to be thinking about the people. What is the people impact of what we're trying to do? The assets that you have. This is after the people is kind of like the list of, this is an inventory of what you have here. You have manufacturing, you have distribution. I went outside and sat outside of your Macy's fulfillment center the last time I was here and just looked at all the hubbub. And then when it was time to order stuff for Christmas, I told my wife, I was like, well, we should get like home goods stuff from Macy's, right? Because I've seen the distribution center and those guys are just moving. So you have all the assets here that it takes. These are the ingredients, I think, and there's nothing that's critical that you're missing. When we look at the location, you know, the location was suggested to us, but the location seems excellent, right? Is this Mahoning Valley thing apparently is getting really hot. Everyone's talking about it. The investments from the Foxcons and TJ Maxx, Home Goods, Macy's, those are very apparent. So why not give companies something exciting to opt into? Give them something exciting to participate in that connects them with the future. So I'm going to give you some examples. This is the shopping list. This is if the federal cabinet ministers that report to President Biden showed up today and they asked the team at Eastgate, what do you want? Just pull this list out. This is your shopping list, right? If we're going to the technology store, we want, and there's cool things in there like charging electric trucks. You know, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but how do you charge electric trucks? Turns out it's not so easy. There's things in there like autonomous freight movement. Well, how do we do that, right? Well, I showed you an example of what the Netherlands did, but that project's already old. We probably want to go to the next generation. But this is your list of what do we want. You don't have to put your glasses on or anything. I'm sure Jim will happily supply you with the list if you want to champion one of these. But the point is, there's a lot of opportunity in here for jobs, capital investment, training. Somebody in this region has to be the expert on every single thing that is here. And then they have to build a team, a knowledge team around supporting that. What does a smart yard look like in our view? As opposed to that crazy port thing we just saw in Rotterdam, I think this is a lot closer to what it looks like. It's just autonomous container moving, autonomous trailer moving, happening here in service to your trucking, your long-haul trucking. You guys also do this crazy thing here with double and triple bunking trailers. I got a civil engineering degree, but I couldn't quite figure that one out. We don't have that in Florida. We just do one truck, one trailer. But I'm sure you guys are used to driving around. It's probably second nature to you. But those types of things should just, in my view, happen automatically. So if I have a logistics facility, my trailers should just kind of show up where I want them, when I want them there. And not having to worry about logistics lets me focus on manufacturing. Or not having to focus on inbound container supply lets me focus on e-commerce distribution, right? So we want our local companies to focus on their core competency, and let's get that logistics piece kind of off their plate. That's something LiveZone can help with by providing a technology layer to support that. Let's see if this is an example of an autonomous yard jockey. It's one of the first use cases we've suggested for LiveZone.
Autonomous.
Let's start moving trailers, like at a Walmart distribution center. Just picture that in your mind. What that looks like. Let's move those trailers to and from the trucking docks autonomously.
In congested logistic yards all over the world, our zero-emission, hydrogen-powered yard trucks, self-driving software, and robotic systems automate operations for moving freight efficiently, accurately, safely. Working together in a fleet with the right vehicles, moving the right trailers at the right time. A reliable link in a complex chain. Consistency, safety, productivity, all day, every day. Because these trying times demand greater delivery. Goussin, be faster, safer, and cleaner.
So that's a French company, and that's why the music's so dramatic. But you can imagine that they have the same logistics problems in France, right? And they probably have even more challenging labor environments than we have here. So that's one of the reasons you see France and the Netherlands kind of moving forward with some of this supply chain automation. You also would have noticed, if you're paying close attention, that there was another yard jockey truck. That's what those trucks are called, yard jockeys. There's a yard jockey truck that was driven by a human. So the human was doing certain functions, probably the critical on-demand things, the immediate dispatch that would require a radio, and the automated yard jockey was doing things that are more passive, right? It's like, hey, go ahead and get the trailers near the truck dock so that it's a shorter drive for the human to connect it, right? So that kind of passive shuttling would then make the human driver's job far more efficient because the system, so to speak, was kind of automatically managing the trailer loads. All right, so you can't do any of this stuff without a master plan, right? That's the planning piece. What is the master plan? This is the master plan. If you want to have technology layers in your logistics areas, starting with live zone, then what does that look like? You know, the first thing is, one of the questions was how do vehicles locate themselves? We said ultra wideband. That's a communication system. In the middle, all those little buckets are communication systems that are managed by a central software. And so 5G, you know what that is. Wi-Fi, you know what that is. LoRa is how devices speak. That's called, that's a IoT communications language. Radio, we know radio is important for EMS, and if you've seen those systems, they're very sophisticated. But radio is also important to, for example, for a vehicle to control a traffic signal. That's how you do it, is with a dedicated, secure radio signal. And then edge computing. For goodness sakes, let's not build any more cloud centers, cloud computing centers, just because we built LiveZone, right? Let's edge filter that information down to just what the businesses and the system needs to be intelligent, right? So we want to filter that down with edge. So anyway, so that's basically your master plan. And a quick question as we get into this: who in the room has actually used ChatGPT for work? Who did a work, and if your boss is here, don't raise your hand, but if your boss is not here, yeah, if you actually did an assignment, or like a personal thing, like a shopping thing, if you did that with ChatGPT. So we got, I don't know, a third of the room's hands went up, maybe close to half if we count the people that won't admit it. So, you know, so what you're seeing is, you're seeing yourself be a computer programmer. So I don't know if you knew this or not, but when you speak to ChatGPT, you're writing a computer program. You're writing code. It's just that Chat is the first type of AI that speaks human English. It speaks our vernacular. So even though you weren't sure you were writing code, you would have noticed that if you change your request just a little bit, you got very different outcomes from ChatGPT. That's because you're changing the software input that you're giving. The software is giving you a different output. So that's just a highlight. How does this look on the road? You know, everyone in the community is going to start to program with the technology, but there's a high likelihood you're not going to have to learn a computer language to talk to the technology. You're just going to speak to it the way you speak now, and it's going to get it. You know, and Wendy's is going out with a ChatGPT drive-through soon. So when you go to Wendy's and you say, I want a Frosty, they know what you mean, right? So when you interact with technology, it's going to be down there on the street level, but you're going to talk to it the way you speak right now. Power and electrification is a huge opportunity for you guys. It's also a danger. So if you're gonna, the federal government said we want electric trucks, right? That's been very obvious that they're pushing that. But then I just heard this morning that you guys don't have enough power for your factories. Before I came, a friend of mine is a solar developer. I asked him to run a search on Mahoning County, and he said that you guys have an unusually high number of solar projects in development. So in other words, I guess Ohio has a pro-solar policy, and that there's a lot of landowners here looking to do solar leases on their property. So that's a great opportunity. What a great way to start to think proactively about making electricity to solve the electrified trucking issue. So it doesn't have to take away from your manufacturing capacity that you can give to your producers. You can make other electricity. It requires new systems. So this is a graphic that the Michael Baker team put together, but at the bottom you can see that's a technology called vanadium flow battery. Next to every solar field, you should see a vanadium flow battery right next to it. Why? Because that way you can dispense the electricity at night. You can produce it during the day and dispense it on it 24/7. So I give you those two examples as these are the pathways. These are the tactical things of what do you have to do if you want to create an intelligent, autonomous, and electrified zone. And I think That's it.
Excellent. So we've got a few more questions before we close out your session, but we'll kick it off with, what is your firm doing to collaborate with organizations like Oh Wow with Marvin, or Youngstown State University has the Excellence Training Center to prepare youth for a career in autonomous vehicular deployment and logistics?
Yeah, we have, so we're big into that. This doesn't work without workforce. So we have, at a company level, we have a partnership with Jacksonville University, which is my alma mater, and they have a robotics initiative, so it would probably be similar to what you're doing here in Youngstown. So we have a partnership with them where we collaborate on projects. And then at a personal level, I teach middle school once a week, and that's to keep myself very humble is why I do that. So.
Fantastic. So earlier you mentioned never having a layoff and having the ability to train workers to where they see the benefit. Do you see any issues to where the current employees don't buy into the training and technology, kind of this aspect of trust of new technology?
Yes, there are always, at the offset, there are always a number of employees that will just opt out. I just don't want to do it. And so we have never had an operation go 100% automated. That's a high business continuity risk to have a business that's 100% automated. So we always see it's a diversity. A business may want to be 50% automated or 80% automated, but if you get rid of all the people that know how to do things, what happens when the power goes out? Or what happens when there's a cybersecurity attack on your facility, which does happen routinely. So those employees just kind of move over. They become kind of like like a NASCAR pit crew, right? They just get more nimble and agile, and then there's people that run the technology, and those are the people that we train.
Sure. So you mentioned it a few times in your presentation, and your connection, I think, to our area has been through the Live Zone. So with your work on that and having some knowledge of the area, where do you see our industry going, and what of these technologies can you see us adopting in Northeast Ohio?
I think, well, you have a natural bias towards electrified vehicles because of the moves that have already been made, the investment, and the capital that you have here already on that. That space is just beginning. It is literally just day one of electrified vehicles. It may not seem that way because you've seen so much hype about it, but if we did the same show of hands of who drives an EV in the room, I won't call you out like that, but we're only going to get a few hands in this room, right? So it is the tip of the iceberg on moving to electrified vehicles. Additionally, it's not just going to be cars that want to be electrified, right? There's going to be a lot of other vehicle types that want to be electrified. So I see that as a natural advantage here. I think this community needs to start thinking about prototyping, 3D printing and prototyping. Get to where, if you want to make stuff in this region, if that's part of your DNA and part of your vision, get to making stuff and make it quickly and agilely and be able to produce things on a test level that can then be scaled into these large factories you have.
Excellent. And we'll throw one more question at you. A lot about partnerships and collaboration today. And it sounds like you're working constantly with all different people and organizations, whether they be public, private, or otherwise. How do you juggle all the different voices and perspectives and the limitations that can come along with that?
Well, we have, this year of 23 was the first year I had to answer that question, and it's because I had an employee revolt. My team was like, stop, just quit getting into new stuff, because we're doing government work, we're doing factories and e-commerce, and we're designing our first robot-enabled hospital right now. So that's something you'll see too, is most new hospitals will be full of robots, like immediately, starting from now that I've said that, until watch that pattern. So my team was like, just stop. Because all these industries come with their own languages. To speak healthcare is different than speaking, planning and government is different than speaking, manufacturing. So we have put a moratorium on new stuff until we get our current stuff finished.
I think we can all relate to that idea. Let's give it up for Matthew Chang. Such an enlightening presentation, and Matthew, I look forward to you programming an autonomous robot version of me to host this show next year. I'll be very relieved at that. But let's take a short break to recharge, connect with our colleagues. We're going to give you 15 minutes. 15 minutes, I will yell at you all, to stretch, refill your coffee, and chat before we move on to the final session for today. All right, everyone, please start finding your seats. We're going to start the show back up in about a minute here. So I hate to cut everybody's conversations off, but please start finding your seats. We'll get started with our next session in just a moment. Thank you. All right, everyone. Hopefully you've gotten a refill on coffee and you've started to find your seats. We're going to get started in just a minute here. So please make your way back to your tables and your seats.
They're all back here. You got them all? Sweet.
All right, final warning, everyone. Hate to break away conversation, but we do need to get this show on the road. We've all got hard work to do in the afternoon, I'm sure. All got to get back to the office. So if you could all make your way to your seats, we're going to get started here. All right, good afternoon. Thank you all. So happy to see that you're all engaged in conversation, forming deeper partnerships, enriching your collaboration, all of these things that we've talked about today. But we're going to get back started on our program. And to lead off the afternoon session here, I do want to call two people back up to the stage. The first is the Executive Director of the Youngstown Warren Regional Chamber, Guy Coviello, and Eastgate's Executive Director, Jim Kinnick.
All right, thank you, Justin. A couple comments I want to make about the relationship between the Regional Chamber and Eastgate. We've identified over the last couple of years a couple major, I'll call them obstacles to overcome in order for us to grow the economy. One of them is growing our population so we have enough people to fill the jobs we're creating. Jim Kinnick and Eastgate then stepped up and launched, in partnership with us, a robust repopulation effort so that we can meet that need. We identified the availability of commercial and industrial sites to grow jobs. Jim Kinnick and Eastgate stepped up and, in partnership with us, launched an equity-based site readiness program. We identified logistics as one of the opportunities for us to grow. And when I say logistics, we identified moving product to market, but also moving people to jobs. Again, Jim Kinnick and Eastgate stepped up, and we've launched the Mahoning Valley Logistics Council. And in many other ways, Jim and Eastgate has been there with us time and time again. So last month at our annual meeting, we presented Jim Kinnick with the Spirit of the Chamber Award. The winners of all of our awards are noted in an advertisement that runs in local print media, and then we take a imprint of that ad and we put it on a plaque. And so today I wanted to present Jim with that plaque noting his Spirit of the Chamber Award. So Jim.
I just have to say, I appreciate the recognition. I accept it certainly on behalf of the whole Eastgate team. But, you know, I focused on partnerships and talk about, you know, the first person we look at Eastgate is our opportunities to work with the chamber. We're in the same building. We see each other all the time. Their staff interacts with our staff. And it really is the definition of a true partnership. I appreciate Guy's leadership to take and move the region forward, and we look forward to continuing to work with them. So thank you, Guy, and the whole chamber team. Their class organization, very professional and doing outstanding things, and we're just happy to be part of it. Thank you.
All right. Get organized here for a second. So in today's rapidly evolving economic landscape, partnerships and collaboration are more important than ever. I think we've heard that throughout the morning's presentations. This panel discussion will explore the power of working together across different levels of government and agencies to implement successful projects that drive regional growth. Our panelists representing the U.S. Economic Development Administration, the Ashtabula County Port Authority, and the Trumbull County Planning Commission will share their unique perspectives on building effective partnerships and leveraging diverse resources for the betterment of our communities. Insightful and interactive conversation will dive into real-world examples of collaborative success, discuss best practices for forging strong partnerships, and outline strategies to overcome challenges in the pursuit of regional economic development. What we aim to do is to inspire and inform all of you on how to foster a spirit of unity and cooperation to create a thriving future for our region. So we've set a high bar for the discussion, but I know our panelists are ready and will do an exceptional job. So without further ado, allow me to introduce our guests. First up is Ellen Heinz. She has spent a career in both the private and public sectors and executive leadership roles in economic and community development, workforce development, and corporate development. Ms. Heinz joined the Department of Commerce's Economic Development Administration in November of 2020 as Economic Development Representative for the state of Ohio. Prior to joining EDA in November of 2020, Ms. Heinz worked as the Vice President of Corporate Development for a wastewater treatment manufacturing company, Safety Services Director for the City of Norwalk, Vice President of Human Resources for a baking company with 3 locations, and Head of HR for U.S. operations for a German automotive manufacturer, serving also on the launch team for a new manufacturing site in Ohio. Ellen's workforce development experience ranges from being the Director of Workforce Development at North Central State College to teaching at the secondary education levels. Ms. Heinz earned a Master of Education degree from Ashland University and a BA from Michigan State University. Ellen is also experienced in international relations and has worked in Japan. She has her OhioCED and has been involved with the Ohio Economic Development Association for many years. Ellen resides in Norwalk, Ohio with her 13-year-old daughter, Charlotte, and Golden Doodle Flynn. Please welcome to the panel, Ellen Heinz. Up next is Julie Green, who is the current director of the Trumbull County Planning Commission and has worked with the residents of Trumbull County for 23 years, collaborating on a wide range of community projects throughout Trumbull County and our region. Julie was born and raised in Youngstown, Ohio, graduated from Cheney High School, and currently resides in Girard with her husband, Jim. Julie earned a Bachelor of Arts degree through the Geography Department at Youngstown State University and a Master of Science degree from the University of Akron. Julie's hobbies include arts and crafts and has served as a board member of the Trumbull County Historical Society since 2016. Julie works collaboratively with regional partners on a wide range of projects and initiatives, including recreation and infrastructure projects, economic development efforts, and quality of life issues impacting our region, including but not limited to countywide infrastructure planning and implementation projects, efforts to end or address homelessness, recreational and cultural heritage development, and response to major shifts in our regional and national economies. A good example of her collaborative efforts includes leading the formation of Trumbull County's Save Our Homes Task Force in 2008, which was initiated in response to the global financial crisis in order to coordinate and identify resources, educate local officials and the general public, and prevent homelessness. Another example includes the long-term ongoing efforts to preserve, sustain, and promote the Youngstown Air Reserve Station. Julie and her staff work collaboratively with the Youngstown Warren Regional Chamber and its foundation, local elected and public officials, representatives from the Youngstown Air Reserve Station, the Yards-based Community Council, the Western Reserve Port Authority, the Eastern Ohio Military Affairs Commission, and the Office of Economic Adjustment to implement the recommendations outlined in the Joint Land Use Study and the Military Installation Sustainability Grant Project. Talk about collaboration. Please welcome Julie Green. And last but absolutely not least is Mark Winchell. Mark has built his career in Ashtabula County in Northeast Ohio by creating relevancy through tangible, measurable, and sustainable projects. He brings a high energy approach to his role as the executive director of the Ashtabula County Port Authority, and his specialties are interpersonal communications, contracts, and business development to help create economic vitality for the county's business community. He works as a part of a development team that is responsible for creating living wage jobs and future growth in both community and economic development in Ashtabula County. When he's not at work, you could find him on his homestead, where he is an avid farmer, raising cows, pigs, chickens, and several dozen varieties of fruits and produce. He is an active coach in Geneva Youth sports programs, coaching football, wrestling, and soccer. He is married to his beautiful wife, Stacy, and has 3 wonderful children, Gabriella, Jake, and Genevieve. Please give it up for Mark Winchell. So now that you've met my friends here on stage, I don't have to stand up here all alone. We'll jump into our conversation. And meanwhile, those index cards that are on your tables, feel free to write any questions you have of your own. We'll have staff running around to get those, and we'll work those into the conversation as well. But Ellen, I'd like to start off with you. With your extensive experience across the public and private sectors, can you share some key strategies for navigating the different dynamics in each sphere when building effective partnerships? And how has your international relations experience influenced your approach to economic development?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I just want to, first of all, is this too loud? I'm sorry, it sounds too loud to me. Eastgate for the opportunity to be here today. They're one of our great 6 economic development districts in Ohio, and just such an outstanding partner. I wanted to also just quickly note before I answer that, so I did get a chance to mention, but out of all the districts and regions in Ohio, do you know which region received the most grants in the last 18 months? Eastgate, hands down. So with a lot of the money that was available with ARPA, we're back to our regular program funds, but to get 7 grant awards out of 7 applications is just about unheard of. We're part of a 6-state region, so congratulations. In regards to my experience from prior to EDA to now, I get to see communities all across the state. I was just talking to one of our award recipients before I came up here, and I think it's definitely a couple of things that would be kind of the recipe for success is to reach out early and often, and to really cultivate those relationships so that you're working with each other not only when you plant those seeds, but to help work on those through the years, and then to have a really diverse network. When we look for EDA grants and we look at applications, if you're eligible to apply, then is your application competitive? We're looking at, is your project in alignment with your area's CEDs? We're also looking at if there's distress in the area, and then we're looking at the collaboration. If there's no collaboration, those projects are definitely not as competitive. And with Mahoning County, they had a roadway project. Where's Bob Durbin? I thought he was in the room earlier, yep. That was the first project awarded in the 6-state region in our fiscal year, which is huge. Again, we're competing against projects out of Chicago, out of Madison, Wisconsin, Ohio that is. So you see that in the projects that are coming out of this area, so I would just recommend continuing to cultivate those. And in regards to international experience, just being open to different thoughts, and I think getting comfortable being uncomfortable, right? We'll never change unless we do that.
Fantastic. Julie, I'd like to throw it over to you. What role do you see for community-based initiatives in economic development partnerships, and do you have any examples of how those come to light?
Sure. Well,
I would say a good example is the emerging development of our cultural and historic museums and attractions, our recreational tourism, and how all of that is so very important towards creating a better livable community, walkable community, more healthy, directed activities, and just being able to show people all of the great things we have here in the Mahoning Valley, and showcasing those. That was talked about earlier today, and I just think that being involved in those initiatives myself for the last 22 years, it's nice to see how they develop and grow, and how those sorts of quality of life improvements like the Great Ohio Lake to River Greenway is such a draw and attractive thing for people. And when businesses come to visit the area, you know, those are the things that they see and hopefully serve to make their decision to locate here. So I think that, you know, you really can't have one without the other. People want to have a great quality of life for their family, and that includes a lot of different things, including those cultural and recreational opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. Setting that foundation on quality of life is really critical, and I think Jim mentioned that, you know, during his presentation. Mark, as someone who's spent his career working on local projects in Ashtabula County, how have you balanced kind of the needs of the local community with some of the broader economic goals? And how do you work in community input into your process?
To be honest with you, that collaboration I think is key. You know, for our community, we're a rural community. You know, as we look at our opportunities, they are many. We have a lot of industrial growth that happened in the 40s and 50s. So we saw a lot of industrial sites, and that was kind of in our heyday as those jobs left through attrition and just other reasons. Kind of rebuilding that community has been important. So for us, developing those collaborations is key. We work in an economic development office that houses the Growth Partnerships. So that's our private nonprofit organization in the county that does attention and attraction. Our county revolving loan fund is based in our office. And really reaching out, recognizing what we do well and what we don't do well as a port authority. We have tremendous power. The Ohio Revised Code gives us lots of latitude. So we can get involved in some of the weeds on projects. You have an abandoned gas station that you can't figure out what to do with. Well, we can take that. We currently own and operate a former coal-fired power plant. We have a permit to pull 200 million gallons a day of raw processed water out of Lake Erie. Again, First Energy decided they're no longer going to burn coal to produce power in Ashtabula Township, and that project was kind of going away. So the industry still needed the water. The Port Authority stepped in, recognized the needs of the industry, recognized the challenges with that, worked with the Ohio EPA and going through the VAP program to bring that site to, you know, within the standards that was allowable. And today we pump raw water to employ about 1,400 people in that complex.
Nice. So I want to throw a question at all of you, and feel free, any of you can jump in for a second or third. But this work isn't easy. There's always challenges. There's always something you've got to work around. So if you have an example of a project where collaboration across different organizations or even different levels was a challenge, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So again, Jim mentioned the Lake to River Corridor project. I think that's a great regional project that's going on right now. It includes, Penny is in the room somewhere from Columbiana County. Penny's got a phenomenal port facility on the Ohio River. We have 2 deep water ports in Ashtabula County, and trying to create linkages between them. The one common factor that you just can't build today cost effectively is rail. There's a tremendous amount of rail that runs from Ashtabula to Columbiana County, incorporating Trumbull and Mahoning County. Guy and his team at the Chamber have come to the table. Jim and his team at Eastgate have come to the table. And looking at non-traditional partnerships, we're looking at private sector investment. We're looking at lots of opportunities, and I mentioned in my bio the whole farming thing. I go back to soybeans because it's a topic we don't talk about very often. We are currently in Columbiana County. We toured Penny's facility. They're bringing in soybeans from Argentina. So they're coming in from Argentina through the Port of New Orleans, up the Mississippi, up the Ohio, dropping off at her intermodal port facility there, and they're doing empty backhaul. Well, why are we taking a barge all the way back empty? What can we do? So we took an opportunity to tour that facility. We said, well, where are soybeans going? So we're looking at Trumbull and Ashtabula County. Our soybeans are being harvested in the field, put on a truck, taken to the Norfolk and Southern Terminal in Cleveland, and then by train are going all the way across the country, up into Canada, out through Prince Rupert, into the Asian market. So recognizing how are the soybeans that are so closely related geographically moving in such different patterns. So just through that one commodity that we don't talk about very often, able to identify what other ingoing and outgoing freight do we have? What other logistical opportunities are there? And I think that kind of, that scratched that itch that we couldn't quite figure out turned into a much broader conversation. Again, bringing in regional partners, bringing in programs that, again, at the federal level will be able to help us fund those. The Governor's Office of Appalachia and that brownfield, a grant program for Appalachia is a huge kind of catalyst to get that kicked off. But I think that's a great example of where you've seen that partnership.
Any other challenging projects, anything you've worked through in your careers?
I would like to maybe highlight the Golden Triangle Coalition. We have all the members here if they want to stand up. I think even Jeff is here from AECOM. It was challenging, but I think it was also something that it was greatly needed, and I know the business community in Howland and Warren appreciated the efforts. It was an ongoing effort led through the Trumbull County Engineer's Office. They can say that. Kim Mascarella's here from Howland Township. Jeff from AECOM is here. Eastgate was part of it. The Chamber was part of it early on. And EDA was a partner. And so securing funding for planning for these businesses, it's one of the largest primary metal manufacturing cluster in the state of Ohio, and helping these dozens of businesses with identifying their needs. It's an older industrial area that was an industrial park before industrial parks were developed. One of the oldest companies located there was formed in the early 1900s and are still operating today. And so identifying all of their needs in terms of infrastructure and logistics and even broadband access, all those things were taken into account through a 2-year planning process that was completed around 2016. And since that time, the coalition has continued to work together with all of the partners to identify, seek, and receive funding. I think we're up to about $10 million. In terms of infrastructure improvements. So some people view that as a challenge. I think most of us that are part of the team just were grateful to have a collaborative working effort and be able to serve our community and serve our businesses and retain our small businesses because they are so important to our values.
Yeah, and just want to add that that was one of the more complex projects that came in, but definitely with some of the greatest rewards. You had a city, township, and county, right, all come in collaboratively, starting out with the study and then coming in for an infrastructure request. So, I think that just said volumes about what's going on here as a region. And, definitely when I was in local development, working together to bring in an attraction project from utility partners to bankers, to chambers, to economic development professionals, to city, county, municipal partners. They're all critical to success when you want to move something forward.
Ellen, that's, I think, something I want to dig in a little bit on is you get to work with, interact with partnerships across the state of Ohio, even in previous careers, broader scope. What have you seen that is critical to success in those relationships that are built between different agencies that may even have different goals or different thoughts about how work should be done?
Wow, that's a great question. I think listening to each other and being open to hear different people's different input about things they're seeing that are needed in the communities. And I was actually talking to somebody right before the session started about, with especially being at EDA, I can go into a community and you can if you have site selectors you're working with or, other businesses looking to come into your community, you can pick up very quickly, are things doing well together or not? And I definitely feel like it has a lot of great things going because of the diversity of partners that you bring into the table. Many years ago, I sat on a state board for economic developers and met Sarah Boyarko from the chamber and was, in a rural community, was wondering, well, hey, we wanted to get our business retention expansion program going, and I was floored by what was going on then, and that was 10 years. Seeing the change, and I think when you're looking at different funding too, is is being able to deliver on what you're doing. And Eastgate and all the partners here today, I think you're demonstrating that. When Mahoning County came with the project, and I talked to Mark Regas, an amazing job too, I was like, wow, didn't this area just, get kind of quite a few grants? We're charged with geographic disbursement of our funds, but we also look at distress and good projects, and it was a great project. And people came together, and whatever we asked or additional information that was needed, everybody came to the table. And I think one last thing is they were willing to tell the story. So it's not just about what's happened in the past, but why money and how is it going to transform the community.
Excellent. One thing I want to make sure we don't miss is partnerships aren't just amongst agencies and organizations, but they take leaders. And leadership is a critical aspect. You heard Matthew Chang reference that during his presentation, but I want to throw a question to you, Mark. You referenced in your bio your experience with farming and youth sports coaching. So how have you taken lessons from those experiences and integrated them into your approach to economic development?
If you've never coached a group of 8-year-old girls in soccer, you don't really understand what leadership really means. Listen, the reality is that great leaders really drive the ship, but it's all the people on the ship that make it work. A guy, again, here's someone that I'd never met Guy before. Had no idea what they did at the chamber, had a meeting in Cleveland, and Shay was there. So talked to Shay and got to know him a little bit and trying to understand connections. Soybean conversation, back to agriculture, that was so funny. We're trying to connect the port in Columbiana and the port in Ashtabula, recognizing there's 2 counties in the middle, but not really sure where the correlation is. When Guy's team came to the table, they said, well, listen, what the connecting piece is rail. Well, these rail-served facilities, there's 4 dozen 100,000 square foot, 200,000 square foot, 500,000 square foot facilities that are brownfields now. They have heavy water, heavy power, heavy gas. How do we tie them in? And then the state's desire and appetite for megasites. Well, listen, does a megasite have to be a greenfield, in Franklin County, or it could be 4 dozen brownfields in Mahoning County? Recognizing that while our desire was part of just connecting these 2 ports, leadership within the valley said, but listen, we have a project that makes sense. And by looking at those, I think that leadership component, again, not like, Guy, you're not a 6-year-old soccer player. I'm not making that connection. But the reality is that leadership was so critical. If Guy and his team had not come to the table, we'd have never recognized the opportunity that was there. So I think the leadership in this group is spectacular. This region has leaders that are coming out from all over, and we really appreciate that.
Excellent. We do have one question from the audience, so if you're still sitting there and you've come up with some ideas, be sure to fill them out on your index card and raise them up. We'll collect those and work them into the conversation. But this would, I guess, be for anyone on the panel. What tools or activities can help keep people from different organizations engaged and feeling like they have a voice?
That's a great one.
Again, so I think I'll talk at you if you don't stop me. That's the reality. You put me up here with the microphone, you're going to get what it takes. So here, guys. The reality is, again, recognizing the voice. If you have a voice and you have a project, it's uncanny how many times these projects overlap. Whether it's the funding mechanism that's going to get them done, whether it's the leadership of the groups trying to push it forward, whether it's the community need that you recognize. If we want to talk about workforce development, these things are interconnected. So I think the reality is those community conversations, those stakeholder groups are in the organization if we're not having the dialogue.
I just think that Eastgate does a great job of convening those conversations. Yes. I know it's very important from where we are in the county level to know what is going on and understanding how it does, intersect with all of our plans and future projects. And so Eastgate's a good convener of those.
So probably more than half the state is not included in an economic development district like Eastgate. So you've had these tools not just yesterday or today, but for decades. And it really shows in the programs and the collaboration. And I think the leadership, as you said, is key. It's being forward-thinking and having those ideas, but also servant leadership. I sat at an event, one of the first events where we started to be able to travel, and sat next to Jim. And he is a kind and genuine person that cares about other people and what's going on. So it's not, all about cheerleading here, but I'm just telling you candidly what I see behind the scenes. It's very positive.
Fantastic. So another comment from the audience. They say, it's so refreshing to hear health and quality of life mentioned frequently as a foundation for community and economic development. So what is the region's greatest asset or opportunity to create the conditions for better quality of life for current and future residents? And what do we need to do to collectively get behind an effort to promote that asset or opportunity?
I think there's a number of assets that we can build upon, starting with our integrating our regional bike trail system. Obviously, the Mahoning River, the opportunities associated with that. We have a great advocate here in Sarah and Sherry from our community foundation of the Mahoning Valley that focus on health-based initiatives. Our combined health districts also do a fantastic job of planning for those things and focusing on how our livable environment affects our health and safety and welfare. And so there's a lot of great things that have been in the works for decades. I've personally been working on the bike trail project, which John Getchie mentioned is his favorite. It's my favorite also, since 2001. And you know, I know that sometimes it's difficult to allocate resources for things when they're limited, but I really do feel like they should be prioritized in order to, you know, keep us moving forward and to improve our quality of life here.
I love that, Julie. I think you brought up a lot of not only ideas or projects or concepts, but also people again. So bringing it all back to how this stuff gets advanced and how these conversations and projects become real is the people that drive them forward. So that's a great answer.
So I ran our county visitors bureau in Ashtabula County for 12 years. So again, it's the lakes, it's the wineries. I mean, there's all these opportunities we talk about. But what I always loved about tourism is that tourism is that first date, right? It's where you get to know somebody. And I think our keynote speaker hit on, you need to focus on these 50,000 square foot facilities. So recognizing that when a husband and wife come to Ashtabula County and they go to the wineries and they stay at the lodge and they go out on the lake for a sunset cruise, and they say, man, you know, COVID has taught us one thing, we can work remotely. And Tony and I had a conversation about working remotely just real quick before this. If my company could locate a business here in the valley or here in Ashtabula County or here in the region, the quality of life is exponentially higher than most places, and the cost of living is much lower than most places. So I think that while tourism is that first date, it's that first opportunity to introduce a person to the region, I think the long-term benefit is creating residency through that, because then they're investing in their companies, they're investing in their businesses, and with modern technology, we're able to work anywhere we want and live here. We can hop a commuter flight out of Akron or Pittsburgh or Cleveland pretty quickly and be anywhere else in the world.
Love it. Ellen, I have a quick question for you. I think your perspective from EDA would be super helpful in this. Our economic landscape has changed pretty rapidly, especially over the last few years. Are there any issues that has brought up in terms of working together or developing projects and advancing them? Or have you seen a shift in how those work or come through your office?
As a region or coming through our office from
any
Eastgate?
Yeah.
Definitely, I see a greater volume, right? So I mentioned more CEDs. So Ohio typically in the past hasn't had a lot of CEDs, and you need to have a plan, and you have to have distress to even qualify for EDA funding. So prior to the pandemic, 2/3 of the state wasn't covered. So volume is increased, so the competitiveness is increasing. So you know, my thoughts are just, again, you know, tying into that plan and priorities and partners, and to never give up. I mean, never underestimate what the power of one person, what you have to change a community. As Jim said earlier, you know, they're going after it. You know, it doesn't matter if they got 2 grants or 3 grants you have in this region. It's important to work collaboratively, because we did see some regions, you know, if everybody comes forward and says, okay, there are 5 projects coming in from, you know, region XYZ, and you know, there's only enough funding to run 2 or 3 projects in the state, you're gonna have issues, right? So it's really important, I think, to prioritize as a region what your top ask will be. But definitely the volume is increased, the competitiveness is increased. Yeah.
Great. Julie, so you've worked on a lot of partnered projects. Even in your bio, you reference your work at YARS. What advice would you give to other folks in the room? How do you keep things together? How do you keep people moving in the same direction? How do you keep people inspired?
Well, in the case of, I'll use Save Our Homes Task Force, we had a great leader at that time at the state level, Richard Cordray, rolled out a template for the state to use in response to the financial crisis. And so I think it's important to know, what resources are available, and also to already have a great working relationship with the people within your community. Most of the entities and people that I worked with were members of the Trumbull County Housing Collaborative, and many of them are still working today and have been proactive in the response to the recent pandemic. And so with that regard, I want to agree with you in your statement. It helps to be nice to people. I know that's a unique concept sometimes, but you don't have to be rude, and I think that goes a long way when you're working with people. Give them some space, give them a little bit of leeway. People make mistakes. Just be kind. I think that more than anything is the key to a successful career. Because if you're not nice, people don't want to work with you.
Pretty simply said. I love that, Julie. Mark or Ellen, Julie kind of hinted at partnerships working both vertically among different system levels or horizontally with organizations kind of within their own community. How have those appeared in kind of your work?
Yeah, a variety of different ways. I definitely appreciate working for the Chicago Regional Office. We've got people in leadership positions who have a background in agriculture who are really looking out for distressed communities, very hardworking people, very intelligent people, and really wanting to give back to communities and help them. I think for me, it's just really important to work together, as you mentioned. So one of the other things you see is, you're competing against dollars, right, and progress and projects and moving forward. And if you have competition within the community, you're already kind of working against yourself. So continuing to move forward with that and looking to outreach. I'll tell you, the Golden Triangle Project, the Crab Creek Corridor Study, which was recently funded by EDA, are looking at equity. They're looking at how to redevelop previously areas that aren't as thriving as they used to be. And there's so many areas all across Ohio and the United States. So I frequently, when I'm out talking to communities, they're like, how do we turn things around? Where do we look to? And I mentioned some of the projects that you've done up here because they really are groundbreaking projects. So continuing to work there, and even though you're competing in some different environments, but reaching out across Ohio, I think is helpful.
So I want to give you all a chance to leave some parting thoughts as we kind of wrap up our panel discussion here. So if there's anything we didn't cover or something you want to address, feel free to take a moment and share with the crowd some of your closing thoughts.
That's right.
So, again, port authorities, work with your port authorities in your community. Port authorities, again, were given tremendous latitude to the Ohio Revised Code. So I think one of the unique partnerships we had some sites that were, I will call them underproductive, industrial parks that were built when I was still in high school that had recognized zero growth. Some of them had CAUV activities taking place in them because there was no way. They've got great paved roads, they've got curbs, they've got water, they've got sewer, and nothing was happening. So working with our county commissioners, they had some ARPA dollars. We were very creative and unique in our approach to that. We were able to acquire some of those underproductive sites and put them back to a higher productive use. So the reality is, I think working with our county government, working with the port authorities, working with the agencies that have unique again, sometimes there's an organizational capacity that you don't possess within your organization, but there's an idea or a concept or a project you need to get through. Recognizing what potential organizations in your community or within your region have that. Again, Eastgate is a plethora of that. I think without Jim's coordination and his team's coordination, I don't know that this logistical corridor project gets off the ground in the way that it has. I think, again, Penny and Greg from our region have been talking about this for half a decade. And the reality is the opportunity came from the state. Jim, and again, the collaboration here at Eastgate has allowed us to bring those partners together very quickly, allow us to put together a very competitive grant ask to make that happen. So that's one parting note that I would make, that if there are needs that you have, recognize the organizational capacities within your community to accomplish those.
You had asked, Justin, for us to think about real-world examples of collaboration. So I thought I'd make this an interactive question. So by show of hands, if you want to raise your hand, how many of you have been part of a collaborative effort that led to a positive outcome impacting people's lives? I mean, I think we can all raise our hands, whether it's for your children's sports or even a family event. All of that takes collaboration. And so it's a big word, but really all it means is be willing to help other people and to get things done.
I just would like to mention that, while be creative, also just kind of to reiterate your thoughts is don't hesitate to reach out to somebody who might have applied for EDA projects before, right? So Eastgate has a wealth of knowledge there, other communities that have done these things. While you want to be creative, you don't have to reinvent the wheel in some situations. And definitely just appreciate each other in the work that you're doing. I want to, again, thank you all for being on the front line, right? So we're there to help fund these great projects, but if you weren't bringing the projects to us, we wouldn't be funding them. So thanks for all you do.
So I want to take a moment to thank these incredible leaders for sharing this information with you. I hope you found it enlightening as much as I have. They're taking the nuts and bolts of the work that we do on a daily basis and really pulling apart how it works and why it works. So to our esteemed panelists, Ellen Heinz, Julie Green, and Mark Winchell, please give us a round of applause. So you've all shared invaluable insights into the power of partnerships and collaboration and how they drive regional growth. Your rich experiences and perspectives remind us that while the economic landscape continues to evolve, the principles of unity, cooperation, and sustained dialogue remain at the heart of all of our successful regional development. So I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to our panelists for their contributions today. Your expertise and dedication are truly inspiring and serve as a reminder that when we work together, we can navigate any challenge and achieve extraordinary results. Today's discussions have given us a lot to think about and act upon as we continue to strive for a thriving future for our region. So, for the last order of business today, I'll call back to the stage Jim Kinnick for our closing remarks.
Thank you, everyone. Can we get a round of applause for our MC? I just hope he doesn't. I think he's got a career there. I just don't want him to figure that out yet. We need him. He's too valuable as a planner here at Eastgate. But I really just want to thank everybody. It was great to get the group back together again. Great input. Matthew, thanks for coming up and traveling. You got everybody thinking in the room right now. There's been so many side conversations during the break. The panelists are really community leaders, business leaders we've had in the room. It's a great success when you see everybody together. I appreciate the time. I also want to take a second to thank the entire Eastgate staff for the planning and everything that goes into this. If we give them a round of applause, because this isn't easy. But that does conclude our program. We really look forward to hearing feedback on what you thought, what we can improve on for next year. We look to continue it. Again, thanks, John, for your 26 years and the organization that you were strongly part of and maintained and probably created. We appreciate that. We do have lunch now. Please stick around, have lunch. If you have to run, please, there's plenty you can take. We kind of made it a lighter lunch so that you could if you had to go, but we welcome you to stay. Make sure you take your pens, tablets, and don't forget your cookie. Thank you, everyone.